Welcome, viewers and listeners, and thank you for joining us here on The Level Set. I'm here with attorney Larry Fields, and Dr. Charles Alexander joins us from Chicago. Let's jump right into it, man. I was, troubled again to see the latest in a long string of incidents involving the police and an unarmed black man. The latest situations in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Young man, I don't have his name right off the top of my head. I think his last name is Leoya. It doesn't matter. It does matter, and I'll get that information when I have enough time to really research more thoroughly and really look at the facts of this situation. But on the surface, and from what I've seen, because I just looked at the video twice in the last 20 minutes or so, and again, man, it looks to me to be excessive force, unnecessary force in a situation where it was a struggle. You have physically engaged the subject. As a police officer, you're trained to physically engage people. He deploys his taser, I guess, to no avail. At some point, he either missed him with it or didn't make contact with it. And the angles are not the best. You don't get a very, very clear view. You can see in scale that the officer is on top of the brother who is at the point that he shot on the ground, face down. And the officer has his back. He's up on, he's actually got his knees in his back, but he's telling him to let go of his taser as if this young man has a grip on his taser, maybe about to deploy. I don't know what he's trying to establish. But ultimately, you see him unholster his pistol in the midst of the struggle while he's issuing these directives and shoots him in the back of the head. The investigation has just started. But again, from what I've seen, and I would like to get all of the information that's available out there, but just on the surface, man, here we are again. And it speaks to something that we say on our show all the time, which is that at some point is beyond really discussion, debate, the back and forth. We need to execute plans of action, effective action that are going to bring some level of systemic change locally and nationally to how policing is done. We see two different criminal justice systems, two different criminal justice processes, two different police responses. I can show you, Larry and Dr. Alexander, dozens and dozens of videos of white male subjects, some of them armed, some of them unarmed, being extremely aggressive with police, attacking police, trying to harm police, all of whom were taken into custody and not shot to death. So here we are again, and that discussion is going to intensify for a moment, Dr. Alexander, as you point out all the time, and then it will fade in the coming months until the next time we see a situation like this. So it really awakens me again to the fact that I've got work to do, and I'm going to be intentional and serious about getting that work done with whatever time I have left on this earth in the space that I'm very comfortable operating in, which is that criminal justice reform, systemic reform space, to the best of my ability. But I don't know if you brothers have seen the video. I know you're both aware of the incident. If you want to just weigh in on what your initial thoughts, your gut reactions. Have either one of you seen that video yet?
Reddit, I avoid that kind of trauma pain. I'll read. I don't want that visual because those visuals sear into my memory.
Yeah.
I can deal with the words better, and I can read corresponding reports on that. And that is that allows me to cope better. Particularly when you do that, from time to time when you handle those egregious cases from a legal standpoint. Now, there are times when you don't have a choice but to look at a video. I had to recently look at a video of, my client was shot while she was on a job. Those are things that, just don't, they stay with you because these are people when we look at them.
Yeah.
As opposed to when police officers, as the one that you just described, looks at them and they don't see a human being. That's what happens. That is why
Yeah.
you are. I am beginning to become more and more convinced that this is a spiritual war that these zealots have waged, and they kill without sanctuary or remorse based off of that. And, you know, art imitates life. When you look at the title of the movie, with respect to Fred Hampton and the fear of that Black Messiah, I believe that that is a charge that runs deep through our albino brothers and sisters' veins at some point. Those of which that are essentially hunting individual, just innocent people for no reason other than the melanin in their skin. That's it. That is it. I mean, it's just no if and there's no difference. We want to make a difference because, Black folks will create these, these issues that will prevent us from dealing with the hard analytics of the fact that we are under siege. So we will try and find the most minute difference in that person that was just basically murdered and us and our children. Oh, well, that couldn't happen to me because I never would have passed a counterfeit $20 bill. The counterfeit $20 bill was nothing more than subterfuge. If it wasn't that, it would have been something else.
And I would hope at this point, man, nobody is of a mind to believe that they are somehow exempt from the realities of how the system works.
I do. I think that there, by and large, is a huge percentage of our community that remains to be, that thinks that they're above and exempt from that. I believe the vast majority are. I think that you've been in the stick so much that the individuals that you're dealing with on a daily basis understand that. And I think you're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. But by and large, man, folks are not up in arms or outraged by that because we're, they feel exempt from it.
Dr. Alexander.
Black Republicans.
I can't hear you very much. Doc, we need you to turn your volume up, Doc.
Okay. This is not supposed to be happening today. Come back to me.
Okay, let's go back to Dr. Alexander. Ready?
Yeah, I was waiting on him to come on in.
Hold on a second. Let's make sure.
Right. In the meantime, one of the other things that stands out for me all the time with this kind of situation is in that space, that criminal justice reform space, the police community relations space. I know of myself and some others nationally, a couple locally, a few people locally who have addressed it from the perspective of law enforcement and having been in law enforcement as a Black officer. And I'm astonished at this point that there is not a greater critical mass of Black officers and officers that come from marginalized communities to give voice and action to addressing that issue within the departments that they serve, and more broadly to law enforcement generally, the different response that people from and in our communities get in situations like that, triggers pulled, versus what is offered up to white suspects in similar situations. Now, you have had white suspects that have been killed by the police. I know that. But again, I can give you dozens and dozens and dozens of instances of white suspects who tried to hit police with vehicles, drag police with vehicles, shot at police, tried to stab them, fought them, and everything else, who are taken into custody. And in this case, the video I saw, from what I saw, and I'm thinking that there's more video out there, but from what I saw, it was such a premature choice, man. It was, so many other options still available for you to unholster and shoot this guy in the back of his head while you're on top of him and he's face down. It was an execution style shooting. So I'm more determined to enlist others with similar backgrounds to my own in terms of the urgency of the work, the scope and scale of the work that remains to be done, in assuring that systemic change is brought to policing in America and criminal justice in America. It cannot stand as it is. And that's the larger kind of existential battle that's going on right now. When you see, for example, how Republicans operate and maneuver to try to control elections and gerrymander elections and suppress votes and drag us back to a time when our rights really were limited to what they said they were, what they set out for us. That is part and parcel of what we see happening in law enforcement. That's why you see, for example, this officer, Dr. Alexander, this was initiated because his plate didn't match the vehicle. That's what started the car stop. Plate didn't match the vehicle. He chases him, they get into this struggle. Nobody is struggling with the people that raided the Capitol. Donald Trump is still walking around free as a bird with his criminal ass, and has committed his crimes in the open, in the daylight, in front of the world. And you get a response from so-called law and order types, the police backing in large part. His crimes are okay. That's the difference. That's why I say you got two different criminal justice systems that operate on two different levels for people in this nation. And we got work to do. Doc, did you get your audio together yet?
Unmute, Doc.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you now.
Yeah.
Now you got me? Okay. Sorry about that.
There he is. That's all right.
So Red, I agree with, all of those things that you said. And I think that, we have to be mindful that we have been, are, and will be second-class citizens. That is the nature of our existence here. And so, to your point, this brother died over, some license plate stuff. Last night, or this morning, I live in a cul-de-sac. This morning, a Homewood police officer thought it appropriate to come into my driveway and put a ticket on my car for not having a valid city sticker. It's 2 a.m. First of all, I have a valid city sticker, but at 2 a.m, what difference does it make anyway? Even if I don't,
Good
and my car is
God.
not on the street. My car was not on the street. My car was in my driveway, right? And so this is just the foolishness that we get, in this law and order space, right? And then so somebody will say, well, he didn't know that you was black. Sure he did, because all of the cars in my driveway got Greek tags on them. They all say Kappa Alpha Psi or AKA. Some jokers know. They know what black houses look like versus other houses look like. And so, but this is what we're looking at. And so it's kind of hard for me. And I wanted to ask you, in your experience, under what circumstances do people get shot in the back or in the back of the head? What risk, what threat of harm can you be to the officer and get shot in the head or in the back?
The answer in most situations is there is no circumstance. The only conceivable circumstance in which you may shoot a subject in the back is if that subject poses a deathly risk to others. For example, if I just observed him shoot somebody in front of me and now he's after more victims that are fleeing from him and he's running after them with a gun, I may shoot
reasonable
that subject.
Circumstance, right?
I may shoot that subject in the back. But generally speaking, man, no. That was my whole issue with Mike Brown. When the officer said he was struggling over a gun, if you remember, Darren Wilson said Mike Brown was struggling over the gun with him. He's struggling over his gun, and he retained his gun. That means Mike didn't have it, right? So if he's running away, what are you shooting at him for? He doesn't have a gun because you kept it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, to your point, there are very few circumstances in which you want to be shooting somebody in the back, and especially not in the back of the head. I was at almost a riot situation, man. You make me remember. I was early in my career over there on Maple in St. Louis, man. And guy that I had been in the academy with got into some kind of struggle with some guy over there and put out an aid call, man. And before we could get there, he had shot this guy. And it turns out it looks like he had shot him in the back. He's no longer in St. Louis. He left the department many, many years ago. And that was back in the 90s. But had shot him, wound up shooting him in the back during the struggle. And man, when that, first of all, shooting him, period, because he died at the scene. He died on the street. By the time we got there, you got a dead subject laying on the curb in the grass, and people starting to come out of the house. And everybody in the neighborhood knew him. It's like family almost. And man, when I tell you it was getting ready to be a riot, and then they found out he had been shot in the back, it really escalated and intensified. We had to get damn near every officer in 2 or 3 districts over to that scene to try to maintain it. So, man, this whole gun them down business has to be addressed. And, you know, if tried on the facts and the facts bear out that this officer acted improperly, he needs to do his time, man. Because like I said, accountability is the best training for any police officer. That's the only real training to me that has been effective over time. You've had all kind of racial sensitivity training, use of force training. Nothing stops the culture from being the culture when it comes to police culture. Like, you go to prison if you violate.
Well, and that's what I think we really have to consider, Red, is that this isn't, I don't think this is a training issue. And so, you know.
Yeah, no, it's
the reason that we had, you know, public whippings during enslavement, and why we had public lynchings, you know, during, you know, Reconstruction and thereafter, was to send a message. You know, those are forms of torture. Those are forms of mental and emotional torture and control.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is intentional behavior, you know, with the thought that they're going to keep the masses in check.
Yeah.
And I think this is the space where we need to be. And this is where you know, I'm talking about in terms of our thoughts on this. So you know, we need to have an intellectual response that moves beyond training. This is not a training issue.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think you can train.
This is intentional behavior designed to intimidate. This is a form of torture. This is intentional behavior and that's designed to create graphic imagery that reminds the rest of us, don't act up.
Right. And Dr. Alexander, and to your point though, Dr. Alexander, the rest of that equation becomes.
Let me just add this to both. First of all, when Dr. Alexander spoke of his neighborhood, he lives in a affluent neighborhood in, you know, outside of Chicago, Illinois, that's heavily populated by middle-class Black folks. My favorite, my favorite guys in Chicago live in that same neighborhood. Randall Hampton, who was an early mentor.
I thought I was your favorite guy. I'm not your favorite guy.
I said all of my. Why don't you wait? Please, see, that's the noob in you. Wait, Randall Hampton, you know, a great guy in the banking industry in Chicago. Isaac Carter, guy played for Princeton. Another guy I met from when I worked at Northern Trust, and then of course, the Dr. Charles P.D. Alexander are all in that beautiful neighborhood, and so that officer knew exactly what he was doing. He
Absolutely.
knew that percentage-wise, it was more likely or not that this was a Black. And he had watched you before. Let me say this, and Reddit, you can chime in. Police officers know just about where everyone lives in their district. They know who's living there, what time they're generally getting in, and so forth. I remember getting a phone call around curfew, and on my son's phone, and it was a police officer that had watched him go to school at Webster Groves and was speeding to get home. The officer was, this was in Sunset Hills. He said, man, look, I gave him two choices. He could either take the ticket or he could either get you on the phone. He said he'd take the ticket. I said, get your father on the phone. And, and we talked through that thing. But the bottom, but my point is, police officers are not, a lot of these aren't blind stops. They know what they're doing. I've had clients that have been stopped in the same neighborhood 20 times in different cars because the police officers that's intended.
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
And
if you've been on patrol in your area, you kind of know the people. But I wanted to come back to Dr. Alexander's point about that mental torture aspect of public executions and public spectacle of delivering pain and suffering to a person without consequence, because that's the rest of that equation, Dr. Alexander. To complete the circle, nothing must happen to the person who's done it. That drives the point home. I do this and there are no consequences for me.
There are no consequences.
The exoneration, to the point where I was reading an article earlier today, if you remember the brother, I can't remember his name. He was down in Oklahoma, I think. He was on the highway. If you remember, his car had stalled and he's walking in the middle of the highway with his hands raised up in the air. And
you got the wife on the street and the husband up in the helicopter.
And the police officer shot him while his hands were in the air from a distance. Not only was she exonerated, but her record was cleared. So they just took it all, even the fact that she shot and killed this guy is just clear. So that completes the circle. And therein lies the importance of accountability, man. If we have advocates out there, we have representation out there in those spaces, legislatively and otherwise, now is the time to drive as hard as you can. All this pushback against defund the police, and law enforcement is law enforcement. When in the hell is law enforcement going to be consistently held accountable for violating the human rights, civil rights, and civil liberties of Black and brown people across this country? We've got that work to do. Part of the fear on the side of the Republicans right now in terms of the demographics of this country and why they're pressing so hard to rig the process and lock the shit in is because they know those numbers are changing and there will be the real opportunity to affect the kinds of changes that I'm talking about because we'll have the numbers to do it. And so that's part of what, when you talk about Black Republicans, Dr. Alexander, which we're going to get to momentarily, that's part of the puzzle for me. How do you join a party that is so clearly invested in the destruction of the community you've come from? How do you do it?
Gerald?
That's the colonized mind.
You muted.
Has Gerald Christmas joined us?
He's joined us and he has muted himself. He has a new phone as device and he has muted himself. But the fact of the matter is, wait a minute, man. I'm bringing you here like Steve Harvey, baby.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is, he's all decked up. He went to his glam squad today. We get the residuals of his earlier meeting, and we're thankful. Go ahead, brother.
I firmly believe that we have to have Black police officers in Black communities. I know that sometimes they can be problematic, but they don't kill you. And I know that they have a better understanding and a concern for the people in the community. And ultimately, we have a personal responsibility to make our communities safe and decent places to live. And we have to make sure that we uphold to that. I'm coming in late. I'm assuming you're talking about the shooting in Grand Rapids?
Yes.
Yeah, I watched that and I didn't want to watch it because what happens when we watch those things so often, it desensitizes us to what's really going on. And I wanted to ask you about it, Reddick. First of all, he was pulled over because he didn't have proper registration, talking about proper plates. That's what he pulled him over for. And then once he pulled him over, he got out of the car. Now that's a no-no. You know, I tell people all the time, don't reach for anything, don't get out the car, don't make any sudden moves. Whenever I'm talking to young people about dealing with the police. But when he got out the car, it was clear that he wasn't going to cooperate. So at that point, that officer who was by himself should have called for backup. There was no reason for him to then get out the car and go after him. There was no felony committed, no misdemeanor. The car wasn't wanted for anything. You was only pulling them over for plates.
Yeah.
So he gets out the car and starts walking. Then he chases after him. He grabs him. He reaches back when he grabs him. Then he goes for his stun gun. For what? You could just let him go. You already got all the contact information to follow up with a ticket for no registration. But he goes and then he comes at him again. He stuns him twice. The gun only has 2 cartridges in it. So once you stun him twice, that's it.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that he got him with it, though. I think he tried to deploy it. He might have missed. I don't know what the situation with the taser was. But to your point, if the taser...
he deployed it twice. It wasn't going to work no more, you know, unless you...
So
well,
like
there's a couple, no, but there's... You have a taser that you can shoot, and it shoots out the projectiles. And then there's a drive stun function on some of those tasers where you can just hold it on a person's body and, you know, drive stun with it. Okay. So I don't know if but to your point, Joe, and let me do this because I know listeners and viewers will surmise, like you said, it was clear potentially, it's subjective, but you could say subjectively that he was not prepared to cooperate. And let's take it even further than that. Let's say he was not prepared to cooperate because he had ulterior motive, or he had something to hide, or he had done something earlier, and now he's getting ready to be exposed, whatever, criminal intent, whatever it is. Still, even in that fact scenario, when you engage physically with this subject at the point at which he unholsters his pistol on top of him with his knees in his back and shot him in the back of the head, you still, I don't care if he was a drug kingpin, I don't care if he was the leader of an auto theft ring that stole 1,000 cars this month. Still, you wrong because that's not warranting a death sentence, execution style, in somebody's yard. And I argue that white folks don't get that same treatment, man, in similar circumstances 9 times out of 10.
But Red, to your point, the drug kingpin don't get that, and the guy that's the chief of the car theft ring don't get that. Yeah. And so this goes back to Larry's earlier point. The police know everybody who live in they beat. They know who the hot people are. And so when we talk about all of these circumstances, when is the last time that a drug kingpin in the midst of arrest got shot?
Well, the officers know that they can get away with, and they don't even care about that.
But that's the point. That these are targeted things.
He is on paid leave right now. There's no reason why he should be on paid leave. He should be confined. He should be confined in jail right now.
But he's not going to be confined because this is what you do to second-class citizens, but that's just part of my point.
They will try to settle this out of court, but they will not charge that officer. I would be surprised if they charge that officer, and he should be charged all day long. He was on top of him and shot him in the head. There was no need to use deadly force, and he was well outside of protocol trying to handle that by himself. And he had no reason not to wait in his car and call for backup. He had no reason not to call for backup. He pulled him over for a minor traffic stop. That's not in Missouri. That's not even a moving violation registration. That ain't even a point violation on your driver's license. That is such a petty violation for someone to then turn out dead, shot in the head. And you clearly was intending to kill him when you shot him in the head.
And clearly, too, Gerald, that was a pretextual
what are we to surmise from these things? So the fact that this happens, and it happens over and over again, what is it that we are to understand from this?
Like Michael Jackson said, they don't really care about us. And
you need to quit acting like they do,
and start
Yes.
understanding that you got to take care of yourself. And if we don't take care of ourselves, nobody else is gonna do it. Nobody else gives a damn about us.
So this is not a training issue. This is they don't care about us. And
It's always
we
been
need to understand it as such.
It's
He
always
wouldn't
been
even-
an accountability
he'd
issue,
have been
man.
arrested
It's
for
always
50
been an
years.
accountability
I don't
issue.
believe he
It
would have
is a
shot
training
a bull
issue.
in the head like that. I don't
It-
think he
it-
would have
it
shot
is
a
a training.
dog in the head like that.
It is a training issue. They're trained to do this. That's what they're trained to do.
I knew you was going with
Yeah.
that. I knew
This
where
is
you
a-
was going,
Trained in
attorney.
the academy. They
This
got
is
they
a
were trained to do that before they
socialization.
even got in the academy.
This is what the patty rollers do, right? This is what slave patrols do.
What happened to Darren Wilson after he killed Mike Brown? They set up a fund for him that set him off.
He became a millionaire.
He's a
They still
millionaire.
ain't doing nothing. Look at
What
first of all,
happened?
Larry.
Hold on,
Look
Larry,
at
hold on,
everything.
hold on,
Larry, Larry, wait a minute.
What happened? What happened to Kyle Rittenhauser when he shot those folks protecting the white flag?
Nothing.
He set up for life. And
He
when
set up for
Martin
life.
goes-
And then you think about, we talk about Kim Gardner. Look at everything for the last 6 years that Kim Gardner has had to go through simply because she filed a charge against Eric Greitens after he had a woman tied up naked in his basement that wasn't his wife, taking a
Right.
picture of her, using that to blackmail her. They have tried to use and manipulated all our institutions to
He's
go
a clown.
after Kim Gardner.
He's a
has
clown.
spent over $1 million. Has spent over $1 million
but
in
it's not.
prosecution, and then you bring up Darren Wilson. Ain't a damn thing happened to Darren Wilson. Bob McCullough didn't charge him. Wesley Bell ain't charged him. Ain't nothing. Ain't been no accountability, period. And we ain't said a word about it. We ain't holding nobody accountable for killing Michael Brown. It's a damn shame.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's that.
On that note, I think we're approaching break time, Larry. Based on our start time, let's go ahead and go to break. We'll come back on the other side and pick up our discussion. We want to get to a few other issues today. Come on back and join us. Welcome back, viewers and listeners. I'm here in the Level Set studio, Zoom style, with Larry Fields, attorney at law. Gerald Christmas has joined us, attorney at law, and Dr. Charles Alexander is with us from Chicago. You know, a lot of what we were talking about in that last segment has to do with our autonomy and our agency and our ability to use those things to push back against a society that has been hell-bent on our destruction for much of its existence. And the word that kind of captures that is freedom, right? Freedom to be, freedom to exist. And Larry, you were talking on the break about freedom not being a destination. Why don't you expound on that a little bit, man, and start us into the second half of this discussion?
Well, you know, we generally, I think during our childhood, we were, as a whole, I think, so preserved that we thought that freedom was where we were, a destination place, that we had arrived. But the fact of the matter is that every generation is going to have to continue to fight for it. There will never be a place in this country, and I'm beginning to think more along in this world, where people of color have arrived and you'll be seen with the same humanity that others are seen with. And you can begin to stress less, pay attention less to things that involve your existential existence with respect to freedom. And what we're going to have to do is to give this generation, our children, a quick comeuppance in this, because those folks that we've raised, that we've allowed to go into these desegregation programs and so forth, have a very false sense of security.
Joe Christmas, Dr. Alexander. Yeah,
they have a
go ahead.
real false sense of security, and oftentimes they don't even have the will or tenacity to fight on these issues, and that's what I find problematic. Many times they don't even see a problem.
But that's our responsibility. And so this is another one of our fronts that we got to put in the work. And so yes, I agree that we have a pretty large segment of of our young folks who believe that they have arrived. I would suggest that it's that there's a very small segment that has actually gotten to some point where they can make this thing do what they want to do. And then there's this other group of young folks who, just through the course of magical thinking, believe that this is something other than what it is. But a lot of that has to do, though, with us as parents. And not that we intentionally dropped the ball. I mean, many of us, parented in a way, we didn't mean to be overindulgent, but we wanted our kids to have things that we didn't. And as we accumulated, then, we did this, that, or the other. Somewhere along the way, we dropped the ball, and, some of us dropped the ball. Some of us threw the ball down. Some of us just dropped the ball. And so
threw it down.
They threw it down, Red. but some of us just literally dropped the ball. But that's kind of where we are. And I mean, I don't think we can, kind of, sit where we sit and then say, and speak on what the next generation is. But to Larry's point, this is the piece, and that is each generation has to fight. And, and one of those things, just what Mike Jones talks about all the time is that, our position in this thing, in this democratic experiment is resistance. Is that for us? Is that for our kids? Gonna be that? Yes, it's gonna be that for our kids' kids. And all of the things that we talk about from week to week are a part and whole of that.
Exactly right. And Dr. Alexander, I think that kind of steers it where I was trying to go with it about this murder, this brother up there in Grand Rapids, man. Mm-hmm. It's proof positive. It's confirmation that struggle is existence, man. For the rest of your time on the planet, this is what you will be engaged in. That's it. Especially if you have any kind of concern, viewers and listeners, for the kind of world you leave to our kids and their kids, your grandkids, your great-grand, whoever it is. Use the breath and life that you have now to work on trying to create that world. And that work involves a serious struggle against an amassed opponent who is hell-bent on you losing that battle. So wake up every day understanding that you have work to do and share that mission intellectually and emotionally with others. Invest in preparing the people who are going to have to continue that battle once me and you and all of us expire to do it. Get them ready, man. They need to know. They need to understand, as they navigate in new spaces where some of them have, quote unquote, arrived at wherever point they've tried to arrive at. They're still, to my point earlier, it may be rose-colored glasses, I don't know, but I'm shocked that the majority of us, as you think, Larry, don't understand that nobody is exempt from this shit. I'm puzzled by that. I don't even know how that's a thing.
Ready though, if you don't expose your children and bring them up in that understanding, they will believe that. And if you have them in all white environments where they don't get the type of support or conversations about these struggles, and if they're not having them at home, if parents are avoiding these conversations, then they will be naive to the situations that are going on out there.
And I could see that. I could see that, Gerald, but I think the vast majority of our kids are not in all white environments. I think the majority of Black kids are in mostly Black
or segregated.
Largely Black, largely Black environments, right? My kids, even when we went to school and all the way up through public school, my kids, they went to HBCUs. Prior to that, every school they attended was 85, 90%, Black. So
that's because they were with you. That's because they were with you.
Yeah.
And again, Red, I think that so Sister made the book, The New Jim Crow. Yeah. I detest the title There is no new Jim Crow. There's just Jim Crow. I mean, we frame this stuff intentionally as though we've made some kind of progress. There is no new Jim Crow. There's only Jim Crow. The Watts riot happened because of police brutality, because of a random traffic, just like this brother just got shot in the back of his head. The Watts riot started with a random traffic stop, 1965. Why we keep acting like this stuff is new? Because we keep framing it like it's new. And so we are vulnerable to this stuff. And again, I'll say it, and I say it all the time, that some of this is really just the trauma response, is that we are prone to this distancing, to this mental and emotional distancing, where we try to put the trauma as far back as we can. And we say stuff like there's no way that any of us should be talking about back in the day. We was all born in the midst of 5 national assassinations. So when was it good? You had the president assassinated. You had Medgar assassinated. You had Malcolm assassinated. You had Dr. King assassinated. Then you had Bobby Kennedy assassinated. And we be talking about back in the day.
Right. And look at the mission that they were all on. And that's what it earned them. Death. In this country, when that's what it earned.
So they were they either professed a mission to make life better for us, or they was faking it. And so you know who I'm talking about. So so we know the Kennedys was paying lip service to it and died, right?
Exactly.
We know what the black man was doing. And so, but again, in the midst of the Harlem riots, a little kid just was doing something on the streets, right? Police brutality, Harlem riot. All of this stuff starts with that. This is what it's Detroit riot starts with what? The police going into a bar and rousting people. All of this stuff is that. Where do the police come from? The slave patrols. That's what this thing is, and we need to quit acting like it ain't.
Larry.
Yes, sir.
You want to weigh in on that, man? Put a bow on the end of that discussion.
He killed that. I mean, what else you gonna do with it?
Right.
Yeah.
He killed that. That's dead. But I will segue into another topic that we're dealing with, which is Gregory Abbott's outright blatant attempt. I shouldn't even say attempt, but actions of treating individuals that are not white in a way that is just as callous and barbaric as it could possibly be, under the pretense that the Biden administration has rolled back the law or the laws that Trump established at the border, which in fact are not officially rolled back until May 23rd. The governor of Texas, Gregory Abbott, is now picking up migrant workers at the Texas border, busing them 30 hours, dropping them off at the between the Union Station stop and Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., forcing them off the bus to be then registered, then go through registration for any sort of asylum or citizenship. So he goes through half of America, sends them through half of America. It's a 30-hour ride to get them to D.C. That shows you what you're dealing with. And you think that you can teach or earn humanity from these individuals. I mean, all through up. I mean, and it's so discouraging that we allow these individuals to do everything from rating our art. Please accept us into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Please give me an Oscar. Please give me a Golden Globe Award. And to give me a loan at your bank, give me a job at your company. We are, we're trying to make deals with these people.
We're in an abusive relationship, and we keep trying to go back to our abuser, and we just don't understand it.
We haven't left them voluntarily.
And
No.
that's it. But that's the point. I mean, I'm Attorney Christmas is absolutely. I mean, this is trauma bonding, identification with the aggressor. We are abused kids. This is it. And I mean, and that's, I mean, that is just the craziness. So we, on the one hand, we will say the the white folks, they're just trying to be like us. They take all our stuff. But we have a fit when white folks don't award us an Academy Award or a Grammy Award. We want to be recognized by white folks. That's just it. We don't even watch the BET Awards because it ain't white. We watch the Grammy.
Isn't that something?
Right.
Isn't that something? You know what? I'm gonna start my own award show, and I'm going to have all kind of phases. I'm going to have an award show, a positive one, for individuals that represent fine art, like my man Big Denzel, and then I'm going to have one that criticizes individuals that take these roles that cast us in such a horrible light. So if you
have a drop squad.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I just said it's a show, man. I'm giving it awards. I'm not dropping on anybody. But no. If you play the individual that fails to be a three-dimensional black man, or you become an idiot, like some of these retired or used to be rappers that are now in mainstream commercials and so forth, looking as weak and malignant as possible, that should be an award show for you. We've got to continue. We've got to number one. I mean, we've got to quit being enablers to those individuals as well.
Yeah, and you know what? Greg Abbott is of a particular party, and writ large, he represents the soul of it, man. This is what they do. They want to dehumanize, particularly black and brown folks, penalize you for your blackness and strip away any access to whatever constitutional rights and protections we may have been fighting for these last 100, 200 years to zero. Which is why it's always interesting, when you see black Republicans emerge. How do they reconcile, man? How do they reconcile the fact that you are a part of a party whose mission is the destruction of your community? How do you reconcile the two?
They don't have. And just because
they
you
don't
black does not mean you have a level of consciousness. Thurgood Marshall said snakes can come in any color, and that's what we have to be conscientious of, and we have to focus on our issues. You know, what is going to be in the best interest of black people, and I'm not even saying black and brown. I'm talking about black people, because we're the only ones out here saying black and brown. Ain't no brown people talking about the interests of black people. Nobody is out here advocating for us. And we have to understand that we have to advocate for us and only us. We have to be concerned about what our particular interests are and what's going to be in the best interest of ourselves and not anybody else. We always want to take on somebody else's issue and somebody else's burden, but that's not being reciprocated. And so we have to focus on solely what is going to be in the best interest of black people. What was that quote you used earlier, Larry, from The Godfather? What did he tell him?
Oh, yeah. He told him, Godfather told the guy that came to him, he said, look, man, I wish you the best of luck as long as your interest doesn't conflict with my interest.
Exactly.
That's it.
And that's what we need to tell everybody. I wish you the best of luck as long as your interests don't conflict with ours. Because if they conflict with ours, it's going to be a problem.
Right. And I understand that position.
And that's fine, but I think that gets us back to, there's a degree to which that gets us back to us. So, first of all, we don't understand. When I say us, I mean our age, cohort. We don't know. We act like we know, but we don't know. The most well-read people that any of us know are probably on this call and another 5 more people. And so we don't know. And so we are vulnerable. And it's the same. I mean, we've talked about this, over and over again. Not that we can't read, we don't read. And so we don't study. And then we say stuff, this is what they don't want you to know. Why would they educate you to, to usurp their authority. That's not going to happen. And so we have to be intentional about this. And we aren't. Because most of us are just trying to do what's necessary for white folks to accept us.
Right. And that's crazy. But to your point, Gerald, here is what I would ask you, because I've heard that position espoused by a number of people that I know, that Black interests should be prioritized, and there is no mutual concern when you use the term like Black and brown. But in America, the realities are relative to change, short of revolution. Political mechanisms and tools are what are used to bring about and effect change. And we are still 13% of the population, man, if it's just up to us. I think historically, any marginal gains that we've made, however temporary, have been in coalition with those who have, to some extent, supported our interests. I don't know how we get away from that and entirely and exclusively go straight to just, it's our show and this is what we're going to do. Same thing I think about reparations, man. Reparations is a valid issue. How do you effect it without some political response?
But that's kind of what I'm saying, Red. That's why I'm saying we have to kind of read and do a deep dive on this, because the fact of the matter, whatever it is that we got by ourselves. We ain't get because of some wide sweeping coalition. And so what we are seeing now is that, and so what we're seeing now is that other people are benefiting from the work that we did. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I'm just saying that that's what happened. And we need to be clear on how we got to this. So this movement, so this thought to use to leverage the 14th Amendment and make it do what it was designed to do, that comes from Pauli Murray at Howard. That was an assignment that she did at Howard. That assignment then gets to the team in Brown, and they used that in Brown because her professor was a part of that team. Was it Spotswood? What's his name, Larry? That brother. He was her professor, and so that's how we get this, and that's how everybody else has gotten whatever they've gotten, is because we leveraged and made the 14th Amendment do what it do. And so it's not because we have some profound, cooperative movement from other people. We did it. Now, I think we need to make some decisions about how we move. I'm good if we gonna roll by ourselves. If we thoughtful about how we do it, I'm good if we roll with everybody else. If we thoughtful about how we do it, but it starts with a deep dive and an analysis of the process.
I'm gonna say this, and we're going to end. We need to have 13% is enough to sway any election, any national election in the world. 13% is more than enough. Trump lost Georgia by less than 12,000 votes. And if we don't take the Manchin mindset,
exactly,
shame on us.
Shame on us. But brother, we can't get it, can't nobody have it. And the bottom line is that we have the ability to do it. If you listen to Malcolm X, the ballot and the bullet, we can swing any election. We just have to come together and focus.
There you go. That's the key. You got to come together. You got to come out. You got a lot of people talking about staying home. That 13% is a whole number in terms of our whole percentage of the entire population. We don't get 100% voter turnout in any election. Not even in our own.
If
not
you
even in
believe
our
that
own,
number,
man.
There is no way in the world.
I don't believe the 13%.
I don't believe 13% either. King.
What do you think it is?
No, King did an analysis on the census back in the 1960s. He said half the Negroes ran away from the man coming to the door thinking it was somebody trying to collect a bill.
Okay.
So, they were doing the census. And he did a deep dive.
So we know there's an undercount.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, that's going to have to wrap us on the level set. We thank you for joining us again this week. Come on back next week. We'll see you. Take care.
And if you guys want to stay and tune in, go for the additional segment, go to YouTube, The Level Set, and we'll be there after hours.